I'm back. Okay, so finally another video on this crazy build that I feel like has consumed my life for the past over 3 years now. As crazy as it seems to say that, you know, a lot of that time has just really gone into thinking. There's not really a lot of excuse for it, but I would say, knowing what I know about this car and this build now, if I had to do this all over again, I could easily pull it off in 8 months, maybe a year, I don't know. Maybe even shorter than that, who knows. But I've spent a lot of time, you know, scratching my head, trying to decide stuff. You know, sometimes I work on the piano restorations, which you guys know I do that. That's always a thing around here. So if I'm not working on the car, I've probably got a piano that either a customer's waiting for or just one that I want to fix up to resell. So that's kind of what happens. A lot of the time that I'm not making videos, you know, or posting, it doesn't mean that I'm like working on the car and not saying anything about it. It just means I haven't really been working on it. You know, it sits. I'll take it out and start it and drive it around the neighborhood a little bit. Otherwise, it's just a matter of trying to decide what to do sometimes, you know, how to build a certain piece to go on the dash or how to solve some other problem. It's one thing after another. So what's really cool is in this video you're gonna see that I'm finally finishing the front clip, getting some stuff put back together, you know, the grills, lots of little loose ends that get tied up. And I actually finally found somebody in town who I think is gonna be able to help me solve the interior issue. As you know, when you order parts from Vaydor, you can order all the hard fiberglass for the interior, and then you can order the upholstery. And I have all that. It's just that you still really need somebody who's got interior experience to put the dash upholstery on. You know, if I can get them to do the seats and it doesn't cost an arm and a leg, I'm going to do that. I've heard of some of the builders, you know, doing their own, maybe some of the rear panels and like the ones that are a little easier. I think the only one I really want to do myself is going to be the headliner, and that's because it doesn't use the leather. You know, when you order your upholstery kit, it doesn't actually come with the headliner piece. There's a few parts that you have to make, and I'm going to use like some kind of fake suede. I got this black stuff that's really nice, and that's going to go on the headliner. So I think I can pull that off. Otherwise, I feel like, you know, this thing is going to come together hopefully sometime soon. It's really just a matter of how active that I am on finishing out some things. So let's go ahead and get into it. I'm sure some of you have been waiting for a while. Sorry that it took so long, but you know, I finally got to put this together, and like all my other videos, it's going to be pretty long. So hopefully you guys are ready. Let's do it. I think the next thing I kind of needed to do was get that driver door painted. There's a lot of things with the interior that you need to see the alignment with the doors on. So you do kind of hit a point where it's like, okay, time to paint the door. So we got to do that because you can't really move ahead till you do. So that's what we're doing here. Luckily, I've kind of gotten the hang of these doors, you know, and it's like those take a lot of work. You're going to notice like you might work on the passenger door for a while and then you catch the driver's door up to that phase. And then maybe you continue with the driver door and you go a little bit further. You know, maybe you work on getting the window stuff to work right, or you did the fiberglass. You know, I mean, for me, I added fiberglass up in the front where the hinges connect, and I did it on the inside because I wanted there to be a lot of structural strength where that front section of the door is bonded really well to the inner shell and the outer shell. So there was a lot of prepping. It was super nasty work, but you know, it was worth it to do it. And then I even fiberglassed the metal plate into the bottom so that, you know, both areas where the hinge bolts onto the door are going to have metal threads instead of just fiberglass, which wouldn't really work too well. But for some reason, when you get these doors, they only come with the metal plate, I think, at the top holes of the door, so you got to add in the bottom ones. While I'm constantly trying to share extra knowledge with you guys, I'm just gonna say, if you're using a metallic color, and it doesn't matter if you buy the more expensive, like let's say you get the Sherwin-Williams Ultra, and that's the good paint. Okay, so it's usually thicker, which means it's not as transparent. Usually it's a 1-to-1 mix ratio. Whereas if you get the cheaper paint, it's probably going to be a 2-to-1 mix ratio, which means that you don't add as much reducer to it. So your gallon of paint that you buy is not going to go as far as if you buy a gallon of the good stuff. That's why it's more expensive. Now, this stuff is tough to get it to cover. I would say if you're doing a whole car and it's going over primer, you don't have any existing color yet that you're, that same color. Like a repaint's no big deal because you've already got existing color. But if you're going over the gray primer, I'm almost going to say doing a Vaydor, and if you're doing most of it one solid color, you're probably going to be best off getting at least 1.5 gallons or 2 gallons of your color. It's going to be very expensive, but it's worth it. And make sure when you get the cans that at some point you get a 3-gallon bucket or something, or 2-gallon, and you mix all the cans together so that you've got one solid batch that matches. Then you can divide it back into the separate gallon cans if you want. But this color is one of those that's very transparent, and it takes a lot to get it to cover. So keep that in mind. Heavy pearl colors are always like that. They have a lot of pearl. They're real pretty, but it's hard to spray them. So make sure that you know that when you get ready to buy your paint, it takes quite a bit. Look at that. That's cool. So even at this point right now, the door panels still aren't finished. Of course, the upholstery guy that I go with is probably going to end up, doing those. But even the cutting, I've started to kind of mount the handle and stuff that you'll see here in these video clips, but there's a lot to be done. And then even getting the alignment right, I just kind of got the doors put back on. I'm still trying to make sure that I've got the dash in the correct spot, because the door panels have to line up properly to the dash when you decide where they're going on the doors. So there's still quite a bit that I got to mess with, but at least I took some video of the things I was doing and you guys can see what's going on here. Alright, more fun stuff. Now, there's 3 main things you're going to need from the G35 door panels. One of them is, and I'm not counting this, yeah, you definitely need the buttons. If you're going to use these, there's other ones you could use, but when it comes like this, you have to take off before removing the door panel on the door. But I'm talking about when you're getting ready to take apart the door panel itself. You're going to want to pull these out because, you can use those. There's these window buffers that go, basically on the door panel. They buff against the window. You're going to have to drill out 2 rivets to get these out. There's one on each end, which you can't see really because I've already drilled them out. But they go right there. And then you've got all these little fold tabs, which I didn't fold them out all the way. I wanted to move them as little as possible, just enough to get this off the old door panel. So you got 2 of these, label them. It's your main things when you're pulling off the door panel. It's the handles, these buffers, and I got the other one over here. These handle pieces that, allow you to pull the door closed. And you'll see, this is the driver here. So you'll see they've actually got some markings on the Vaydor door panels. I didn't notice this before, but they've got markings kind of to help guide you where you need to start drilling the holes. There's also a marking up here. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but it's kind of indented, and I hope that all the kits have that. But you can see a little bit of a circle where this is probably going to go through. Now, I don't really know of any good way to try and line this up and get it on the first shot, because you can't really test that. It's you're going to have to drill both holes and hope that they're there. All I'm thinking is if it's a little off, the holes might be a little big at first, and then I can put this piece on and you can go back and you can see exactly where this needs to basically catch. And then this also has a catch up here on the top. So if you want to be able to use those, you might just have to go put some resin back on the door panel if it's not right. But that's always repairable, since these are fiberglass. So that's the 3 main pieces if you're taking the door panel apart. It's going to be those, the actual handles that open the door, and then those buffer pieces. But
Of course, you know, your window switches and a few other things are going to be stuff that you've probably already taken off when you were taking the car apart. So keep those in mind. I like to keep some of this stuff around at all times. This is just basically like masking paper you would get at Home Depot or Lowe's. And it's that really thick, not super thick, it's not like the RAM board, but it's basically like barrier paper. It's usually a 36-inch roll. It's like, if you're looking at the 18-inch and the, you know, smaller 12-inch like masking papers, they're real thin. This is like the next step up. It's kind of like a paper grocery bag thickness, I guess. So I keep a roll of this stuff around. I made a little template, and this was pretty easy to make. I took the driver door handle, basically laid this down, and I traced it that way. And even though you've got all this stuff sticking out, you can get pretty close if you just kind of eyeball it from above. You can get it pretty close, and then if anything, cut it out, you know, smaller, and then you can come back and adjust it whenever you actually set this here. Now, I know this isn't the way that the final hole is going to be. It's a little bit big down here, it looks like, stuff like that. But what I did was use this as a template. And it looks like I've seen some other pictures. And if you just line the curve somewhere up in here where it looks nice with this, then you're probably going to be okay. So I've already traced that one out. You can really see a fine little green line. That, like I said, always cut that smaller first, because you can always, you know, shave it out a little bit once you can put this piece back there and match it up. You can see where to shave it. And of course, if you got to straighten it to the door panel a little bit, you know, that's going to be nicer. Let's see. Now, as far as the bottom one, oh, also with that little template, you can use the same one. That's the driver's side. Flip it over. Now you've got the passenger side. So, you know, save that. Now, as far as this, I had to cut a little bit off this piece here, but I like to save things like this little catch piece. Now, I don't think I'm going to be able to use this in any way, because this is actually going to be mounted on the back here. So I'm probably going to have to, you know, come up with something. But I like to leave stuff like that if I can. And then if I can't use it, I'll just trim this more later or something. But you can get this traced out. Now, I feel like the name of the game for me on this one was to try and center it on the door handle somewhat, and then also center it here from top to bottom. Now, it's not perfectly centered. I think it's sitting a little high, but when I look at it from head on, it actually doesn't look that different. So all I had to do was come up under here, and again, you're going to want to put your head like right above it, so you're eyeballing like straight down. And I was able to look at it through there. And I basically just said, take the marker and draw about 1/8 of an inch outside of there, and then try to go 1/8 of an inch outside the top, but then run this line as straight as I could to get it, you know, to stay uniform. Now, of course, before I cut these, I'm going to take some measurements with a tape measure just to see about how close I am. And then I'm also going to measure this width and length to see if both sides are kind of uniform, because I want this to be a pretty nice like rectangle hole, since it can be. Of course, it's not going to be perfect. And then another thing, I'm always going to start my corners with drill bits. That way they're nice and round. You know, I'll probably drill a hole. I'll probably drill kind of a big hole up here. And then anywhere that this thing curves, I'm going to have, you know, some size of a hole. That way it's easier to cut them out. So yeah, that's what we're doing now with the door panels. And I think they're going to come out good, but just kind of barely getting started with this. I might also start fitting this thing in too, just to kind of see how that goes.
One thing you might notice here is that I tend to sand the inside of the panels where all those little loose spikes of fiberglass are kind of hanging off. It's a good idea to, anytime that you're messing with these parts, you know, just give a quick sanding, maybe with some 36 or 40 grit, even 80 grit, you know, just anywhere where you've got rough fiberglass, because this stuff ends up in your fingers if you don't, and it hurts. These little spikes are painful, so that's what you kind of see me doing here every now and then. I finally got tired of this thing sitting against the wall in my paint booth, and you know, at some point it's like, hey, come on, let's do this, let's get it done. So remember, if you've heard me talk about the slick sand primer in the past, I already had that on the front clip. That's what I used to prime, you know, all the gel coat and basically do the you know, the body work while the car was still put together, you know, or at least roughly put together. The slick sand, which is a polyester primer, it's very thick. You put it on with like a 2.5 millimeter fluid tip spray gun, and it's really hard to sand, actually. Like, you're gonna realize you spend a lot more time sanding the polyester primer than what you spend when you sand the 2K primer. And for a couple reasons. The 2K primer, you're not trying to pile it on there as thick. By that phase, you should have fixed pretty much everything. You know, all your inconsistencies and your little waves and stuff should be pretty much gone. So I think I was still blocking the slick sand with maybe some 180 or something like that. And then once you get to the 2K primer, you should be pretty much blocking with 220 and 320, you know, and then leaving enough to where you can wet sand with like 600 or somewhere around there. So this is a long process. It's very dusty, messy, but of course the paint booth needed a really good cleaning when I got done with this. So I want to backtrack a little bit about that first primer, the polyester primer. You know, it's basically kind of like a resin-based thing. Like you're using the same MEKP hardener that you put in polyester fiberglass resin. So even though the epoxy resin I use a lot different, don't confuse those. The polyester resin uses that little tube of hardener where you put the drops in it. That same stuff hardens the polyester primer, the slick sand. And because of that, you're going to notice this stuff seems hard as a rock. Like when you're trying to sand it, you really got to be thorough. You know, you don't want to just shoot the 2K primer over a halfway sanded, you know, polyester primer. And all these little curves and contours, it's just going to seem endless. Like this front clip, you really need to like pull up a chair and plan to be there for a while. You know, grab a Snickers or whatever. I'm not sponsored by them, but actually that'd be kind of cool. But man, like, it's like they say, you're not going anywhere for a while, grab a Snickers. Man, just, you gotta be ready to just take your time. You know, you're trying to sand in all these little contours, your fingertips are gonna be raw. It's a process, but you know, it's a labor of love. So once you get it all ready, yes, you can use a Scotch-Brite pad to kind of do a final prep in all those crevices, but that should just be like your kind of last resort. Like, okay, just in case I missed a spot, the Scotch-Brite at least is gonna scuff it up a little bit. Don't depend on the Scotch-Brite to do your sanding for you, because with the slick sand poly primer, it's not gonna do it. Like, I mean, you'd be there for a while. So keep that in mind. Really put in the work to try and, you know, sand this stuff right before you go to the phase of the 2K primer. I want to add a word of caution here. If it's your first time using Evercoat Slick Sand Primer, you need to read the tech sheets, and you should do that for any paint materials. Always get the technical data sheets that they'll print out and give you at the paint store. Listen, here's why. It has an extremely short pot life. Alright, maybe you mix some clear coat. Clear coat will give you some time in the spray gun before it starts to harden. As soon as you put the hardener drops into the slick sand primer, the clock is ticking. Especially if it's hot outside, you do not have time. Alright, you need to have whatever it is you're going to spray ready, taped up, wiped down, completely 100% prepped. And I'm talking Mix that stuff, stir it up, put it in the gun, and spray it as fast as you can. And that's also why you need the 2.5 tip spray gun, because if you try to do it with a 1.7 or 1.8, this stuff is gonna harden in the can, and you're gonna have a ruined spray gun most likely. I mean, if you ever could get that stuff out, it's gonna be a miracle. So this is just a word of caution. I probably said it in a previous video when I'm using this primer, but if you haven't been able to watch those videos and you're only seeing this video getting ready to use this product, read the tech sheets, be aware of the pot life, because it is not long with this primer. You don't have a lot of time to mess around. So be quick about it, and don't make the mistake I almost made. There was one point where I was almost done and the last bit started to get a little gelled up in the gun, and luckily I was able to just pour it out real quick and clean the gun. But it was a close call, and luckily I was done. So yeah, don't make that mistake. I'm giving you guys a really friendly warning here. Be careful with that stuff.
So one thing you guys are going to notice about this process is if you do the slick sand primer first, this is the K38, so this is my like final primer. But the slick sand is the one that's kind of almost like polyester resin based. It's really hard. It's what you put on the white gel coat, and I know you guys have heard me talk about that before. I need to check that line. I might have run the sandpaper a little too far over, but that's okay because I think I just ran onto the line a little bit. Yeah, should be all right. Anyway, I'll straighten that out. But basically, you're going to notice with this stuff that it sands a lot faster. All right, that layer of slick sand is going to be the first coat where you really got to take a lot of time. Like when you do that first coat of slick sand, or at least let's say 2 or 3 heavy coats, it's going to take you a while to sand the whole thing, because even if you're using like 120 or 180 grit, it's a lot of work because you're literally straightening all the imperfections and the inconsistencies. So there's a lot of stuff. But you'll notice when you get to this 320 grit, you know, whenever you're sanding the K38, like your final primer, it's going to go a lot quicker. Like I've literally sanded probably 50% of this thing in 30 minutes instead of spending like 8 hours on it. Because like, man, when you really get it right, like I've got guide coat on here. I'm going to show you. This is 320. Should be some 3M320. Yeah. So basically, I mean, you'll see it's going to, even with a few quick passes, it's going to look pretty, like it's cutting pretty level. All right, now you're going to notice some lows and highs here and there. Well, let's keep going with it for a bit. Man, it's like, it sands so nice like this. And I also I'll run the block over both sides of this line too, just to kind of see how it's looking. Now, if you have to, you might have to do some final, you know, filler touch up here. A lot of this is going to block out, but I might come back into a real thin swipe of filler just because I can tell there's a bit of a low spot. But for the most part, that's all you should really have left, is real minor stuff like that. When you're on the final primer coat, I mean, you should really be able to like almost wipe over it and see it block out pretty smooth. So my paper is getting a little bit dull. I need to probably change this. That piece I've been sanding with for a while. So yeah, it's really cool, man. But you'll notice when you're on that final primer coat, it's gonna come out a lot quicker than it does with that first coat. Like that hood still has the slick sand. You can see it's a little bit of a darker gray, and I haven't really blocked that yet. But yeah, you should do a nice 320 grit block, and then you're gonna go back and wet sand it, you know, 400, 600, 800 grit maybe. I like 600 and below, especially since I'm doing a new paint job. It's going to have color, clear, everything. There's a lot of material going on. So maybe if I was just clear coating, I would do like 800 or 1000 grit. But yeah, that's when you already kind of have a paint job and you're just reshooting the clear. But yeah, it's coming out.
Now, due to the fact that I'm worried about running out of this color, and I did a thing where I went to the paint supply store. I don't know if I mentioned in a previous video, but this color was basically the last can of some product that one of my paint supply stores had, and they mixed a whole bunch of toners together just to get rid of the last of them, and it came out with this beautiful color. That's how I ended up with this color. And of course it was discounted. It would have been a $1,400 can of paint. I got it a lot cheaper than that. But what I did was I went to my paint supply store, and we sat for about 3 hours one day. We found a chip that was super close to this color, and we went back and forth adding some stuff, you know, taking notes. We basically created a formula for this color, which means, yes, you don't ever get a 100% dead color match when you remix a new can, but we know how to get very, very close to the 99% sure, pretty much. And what I did was had some extra paint made so that I use it as my bottom 2 coats, maybe 3, and then I use what I have left of the original color as my final color coat before I clear. So the reason I'm telling you that is because I decided at some point that areas like under the hood, maybe under the trunk lid, you know, the jamb of the hood, I don't need all that to be emerald green. So, or whatever this color is called, it didn't have a name. But I decided it was fine to use the satin black in some of these areas, and it's going to save me some of the green paint. Also, it's easier to maintain. I feel like if it were ever get scratched under there, it's easier for me to maybe take some of this black satin that I use and you know, touch it up, or maybe even, you know, tape it off and throw some satin black Krylon in an area just for a quick touch up. But I wasn't too worried about that, so I wanted to get the hood jamb area trimmed out before I painted the green on this front clip, and you can kind of see the way that I did that here, and it came out really nice. I love that. But that's why you're gonna see black under some of my covered areas, just because I felt like it wasn't necessary to use this expensive color that, number one, it's hard for me to get more of it made, and then number two, it doesn't cover very well, so it takes so much of it. Even just to paint these thin slivers, it would take so much extra paint at the end of the day. So that's what we're doing now. We're getting ready to spray this thing. It's going to be super cool, and glad that we're finally at this phase with the front clip. Now, if you're familiar with how a lot of Vaydors are painted, the front end actually has some areas that go around the grills, like on both of the, you know, the left and right sides. And then as far as like the main grill in the center, there's black that goes around it, and it also goes on that little crossbar. Now, I think it actually adds to the aggressiveness of the front clip. I don't know, I feel like I've seen a Vaydor or two where they painted like all the areas of that front clip, you know, the same color, and it almost seemed like it didn't have the aggressive look. Like when you do the black on the little crossbar in the center, it almost gives you your regular color as like that upside down U. And there's something about that, just almost looks like an angry mouth or whatever. And I think that's why the car looks so cool. So I really wanted to do those black accents. Now this isn't the same as what goes in the jamb of the hood. This is actually the carbon flash metallic black, which is a Corvette color. And this gets clear coated, so it's not satin finished. This goes on before the green. You got to mask up for it and do it, you know, be real tedious about it. But then once you pull all the masking off, you clear coat the black and the emerald green all together. So this, you know, took a little bit long, kind of like the body of the car, but not near as long as the body. You know, of course, it's a lot less area that I gotta tape up and deal with here, but I think it came out pretty good. So this was definitely a fun day. So getting back to this little front core support panel, I knew that I still needed to make some adjustments for the headlights. You know, I don't think I had finished all the mounting areas, but I was close. I had at least gotten it to where I knew exactly where they needed to sit, but the holes needed to be cut out a little bit more, because you're gonna realize, like, you gotta be able to access the back of your headlights when the front clip is put on. Otherwise, it's gonna be a pain if you ever had to like change out a bulb or something. So I made sure that I got it to where I could get my hands through the holes of the core support. You know, the wiring's easy because I went and soldered, you know, the little pigtail connectors that I had bought at some point. So, you know, put in a lot of extra work before I was able to put the front clip on. And of course it was driving me crazy, like seeing it set in the paint booth, like painted, because I wanted it on the car. But you know, for me, it's like everything kind of has a step-by-step. I knew, like, hey, there's an order to the madness. Like, let's just get this all, you know, done, so that when I put it on, maybe I won't have to pull it back off so fast. I mean, yeah, I'm sure it's gonna have to come off again at some point, but hopefully not. Maybe I can work around it, and you know, for the most part, I think I got it good. So that's what we're doing here. Just kind of getting the headlights where they need to go. And then we're going to paint this core support piece with some of that zero rust kind of satin black stuff. It seems to be a pretty durable coating. I know it's meant to go on metal, but I feel like these coatings stick to almost everything if you sand it right. So that's what's going on now.
Alright, here we are back on the Vaydor. Now, this past week I got the front clip painted. It looks stunning. Can't wait to put it on. But I had a few things to tidy up with this. So I'm going to zoom out. So what I've done is I went and cut the holes I had marked. You know, I needed to make them a little bit bigger because I wanted the headlight to be able to sit in there comfortably. Also, I want to be able to change the headlight bulb if needed just by jacking the car up and taking the wheels off, because if you don't do that right there, you're going to probably have to take the whole front clip off to take, and that means undoing the hood and everything just to mess with your headlights. So this allows me to access at least the bulbs. Even though it's a little tight, I can take the wheels off and get back there without all that other stuff. So I did that. Also, I needed to establish the third bolt points for the headlights. I did this one, and then, you know, I just riveted to this piece, to this core support. There's a hole on this side because the headlight itself had a tab where I put a clip nut on. And then the third point I had to establish was up here. So I actually had to add fiberglass. I cut this out so originally the headlight could sit a little further down. But I probably wouldn't have had to do it that far. I just added back some more. And I got to sand all this anyway to paint it. So it's good the way it is. But I shot a rivet nut there. I believe that's a 1/4 that I used. And same thing on this side. So now I've established all three headlight bolt points. Also staying up all night last night, I got these wiring harnesses that I ordered soldered in. So you can see I soldered them. I can't even see it from here. I've got the wheel turned now. But I made the little bundle, taped it all together. Looks nice and clean up in there. I just gotta, once the headlight's installed, I'll hide that a little bit better off to the side. But so the wiring is good now. The headlights work, the signals, the little angel eye LED thing, all that works. And I've got some LED low and high beams that are on their way. Now these cruise headlights use H1 and H3 bulbs. Okay, it's H3 for the low beam, H1 for the high beam. No matter what, I don't know if Chevy Cruze originally comes with those bulbs, but the aftermarket headlights that a lot of us are using for Vaydor use the H1 and the H3. So that's just something that you need to make sure before you order your LEDs. And I'm telling you, the lighting at night on these cars, you're gonna have to do everything you can to upgrade, because you can never tilt these lights high enough to get the lighting that you need. So LEDs, I'm hoping when I get these that they really are 600 or 800% brighter, because this car is going to be practically non-drivable at night, at least through dark areas, if you don't have better lighting than what I had in those The other thing I'm thinking is once I get the front clip all put on, there's gonna be an area either in the grill or the two sides where I can probably add some really bright LED bars and just light the front up, you know, some way or another. So even if it's not done with the actual headlight assemblies, there's a way to get the lighting to be good. It's just gonna be a bit tricky for this car. So that's that. All right. So the last thing before I pull these off, I've had self-tapping screws holding the parts in up here. Of course, the rest of it has bolts, like where it mounts to the core support and the bumper. There's bolts holding it together. So, you know, I'm gonna actually clean up. Of course, before I paint, I gotta clean up all the edges and round stuff, make it look pretty. But in the place of the self-tapping screws, I'm gonna start with this. I love these countersink washers, and I've probably talked about them in previous videos, but I used to work on airplanes and they used to throw these away when they were only single use. So sometimes if you pull a windshield or something out of an aircraft, the fasteners are only one-time use. So whenever you know, they're self-locking. So they say when you put it together and take it back apart, those fasteners are basically bad because they've already been used and the friction will have worn them out a little bit. Even though I know that they could work for 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 more times a use, like it takes a long time for a self-locking fastener to actually wear out to the point where it could back out on its own. But anyway, they would throw the stuff away, and I made it a point to save a bunch of them. So I have tons of these countersunk washers, and all you got to do is drill the countersink enough to where it's going to set in like that. And I've almost got it low enough. Yeah, it's almost there. I'm gonna countersink the fiberglass a little bit more. But I happen to find that these little machine screws, and you can see they're kind of a fine thread. The machine screws that I also saved a lot of, they fit just right where the self-tapping screw was. I just had to, you know, get the threads to kind of reform in there. So they fit good, and I'm going to use that little bit to hold this back section on, at least for now, just to kind of replace the self-tapping screw. I don't really know if it's necessary because there's so much holding this piece on, but this is just to kind of keep it from moving around. So that's what I'm doing for this. Okay, so this worked out awesome, and you can see it's an extremely low profile way to install a fastener on fiberglass. Also, if you can get a hold of some of these, I'd imagine, I mean, there's aircraft places that you can order those washers, but you have to know the size number and all that, like to get the holes right. There's a lot of, I have an A&P license and I can't even remember all the sizing charts and stuff for getting like the hole, the outside diameter, the inner diameter, all that. But I'm sure you could find something like this, even maybe on Amazon, they might have countersunk washers. And the sheet metal that these screws are going into isn't very thick. So once you get the threads made, just put this in for the final round, you know, with a screwdriver, so you're not over tightening it. But otherwise, this is working out great. And if you want to know where I got these screws that fit these washers, I don't know, if you order washers, you're just going to end up getting the screws that fit your washers that you find. But the screws I used are from when you buy a door hinge, like for a house. It usually comes with the really sharp, I don't know, maybe it was commercial hinges that are meant to go into like a metal frame. But it'll come with a few screws that are sharp for going into wood, and then it comes with these self-tapping kind of screws. They don't look like self-tappers that you'd see people normally using. They've got like the threads with the little notches cut in it so that, you know, or self-threading screws, not self-drilling. But yeah, that's what they are. They're the self-threading screws from like a door hinge you'd use like in a building.
So once I sanded the living crap out of this thing, it was finally ready to paint. And oh my gosh, like these fiberglass pieces drive me crazy because I feel like you need to put on a full cover suit and some, you know, respirator. Like there's so much fiberglass dust, especially when you need to, you know, sand the edges nice. I like to even round the edges off, like not just the corners, but I don't like having a sharp cut. So I'll sand the inside and outside of, like, you know, all the way around the edge. I like them to be nice and smooth. And it just seems to take forever, but they come out really nice. So glad that this piece is finally there. I've kind of dreaded this one for a long time. I just knew it was going to be a tedious kind of headache to get this one done, but I'm glad that it's got some black paint on it now.
Man, I'll tell you guys, it's nice to have this stinking thing painted. This is one of those parts that, and just throughout the build, you're going to put it on and take it off so many times. I mean, probably more than any other part. This one, at least for me, I feel like in the beginning it had to come off and on a lot. You know, doing the headlights, I might have had to do some stuff. Just whatever. The front clip, like, you know, the getting stuff to go through it and wires and whatnot. Man, this thing, just seeing it painted makes me so happy. So anyway, I even sprayed the back too, just because I kind of wanted it to. I had some paint in the gun, so I just felt like, why not? Oh yeah, and look, there's a Lambo project. That might end up being a DIY someday that I put on YouTube. It's a 1992 style Diablo. So yeah, cat's out of the bag. You guys know what other kit that I have sitting around here now.
Alright, one of the coolest things that you can do these days, if you've got a car with basic, you know, I call them brown headlights, but if you look at an old filament bulb when it lights up compared to LEDs, they actually look like a tannish brown color because, you know, the filament, it glows like whatever, it's a bright orange, but somehow there's like a brownish in that. So, you know, you can really increase your vision at night whenever you use LED lights. I mean, they're so bright. It's not even funny, and it's not just like, I feel like they're at least 10 times brighter. I guess depending on what kind that you get and how much that you spend, but man, like, I mean, I feel like any car, you don't even have to buy HID headlights anymore. That's what we used to do when we wanted that bright purplish blue kind of super white look that you'd see in the Lexuses and the Mercedes, you know, in the 90s. But now so many cars have them, and these days, like Tesla uses LEDs, they look just like HID. But this is something that you can pretty much do to any vehicle. I've got LEDs in my truck, and it looks so much better at night. You know, but there's so many different brands that you can buy, and that's a difficult part. So with this thing, all I did was figure out the size bulbs that need to go in these headlights, and if you know, the Vaydor uses headlights from a Chevy Cruze, like the assembly. So I had to actually take the bulbs out and see what style bulb that it was, because these are aftermarket headlights, and I don't know if they use the same style bulb as like a factory Chevy Cruze headlight. So whatever they were now, I can't remember, H3, H1, whatever they were. But I ordered them on Amazon, and I went with a pair that, you know, they weren't the cheapest ones, but I felt like, you know, something that seemed to have decent reviews, and so far they've been so much better. Like, just a couple times I've driven around the neighborhood at night, the bulbs look awesome. So that's what I'm doing here. It's pretty easy, you know, DIY if you're going to swap out your headlights, but, you know, I just had to kind of figure out which ones to go with and get them installed.
Alright, I'm getting ready to hopefully install the lights for the final time. I mean, I'm sure, you know, I don't know, hopefully I don't have to take them out again, at least for a while. But they look pretty nice. I got the tape and paper off of them, or tape and plastic. Also, I've wired the lights with these harnesses that I bought. You can see I did heat shrink and solder and all that. These harnesses had 8 wires, but I only needed 5. So there's going to be 3 that just aren't connected to anything. Also on here, there's the 3, but you can see the other ones run back, and I just gotta tile that stuff up good whenever I get it all put together. So, really proud of how this stuff is coming out. I got the final rivet nuts installed where these end points go for the headlight here. So the rib nuts are there, and then I painted this whole core support piece with the satin black, you know, or it's kind of a, yeah, it's like a satin, I guess. It's this, here, I'm gonna show you the can. This Zero Rust stuff is pretty cool. And I know it's meant for metal, but it seems like it'll stick to a bunch of other stuff too, and it's really durable. So no harden or anything. That's also a good one if you ever use Pour 15. That's like a semi-gloss version of it that I have. But that's what I used because I felt like this fiberglass piece didn't need the industrial satin that I use like for the engine bay. That's a really strong coating. It has a hardener and stuff in it. I'm kind of going off topic anyway. Got that painted up really nice. I love the way that it looks. It looks so much better than when it was a fiberglass color. And I'm gonna get these headlight assemblies installed and see if I can get the front clip slid back on today. I know I gotta pull the wheels off to do that. I don't have to move the car around to the back and jack up the front and whatnot, but yeah, so this is pretty cool. I'm gonna get these lights put on, test out my LEDs. I put LED bulbs in the low and the high beams. So I think it was H1 and H3s. And I got them on Amazon for, I think it was $100 for both sets. And I know you can get better ones, but I figured I would try these. They seemed like they had good reviews, so. All right, here we go. It's coming out good.
So of course, before getting too ahead of myself, I realized that I need to put on the front grills before I can install the front clip. And you do have to be pretty creative with these. I'm sure there's many ways to do it. I always like to build some kind of maybe like a mounting point into the fiberglass, since you know it's not painted in the back, it doesn't matter. I can, you know, still work back there. And I built some mounting points where there were some wing nuts or something in there. I can't even remember what I did now. I might even talk about it in the clips. But basically I wanted to make it to where these grills were easily removable. Now, most likely if you have to do that, they're going to have to come off, you know, the front clip would have to slide back off first, which is kind of a pain, but you know, then again, there's not a whole lot that holds the front of the car on. I mean, sure, you're going to have like the hood latch you'd have to undo and pull the hood off, you know, first, but it's not that crazy. Now, as far as the big center grille, I definitely wanted that to be able to be removed while the front clip is on, because I want to be able to work in there. Like when I put the hood on, the hood bolts go through, but I also have stop nuts that I'm going to put on the bottom of the hood mounts. So once the bolts are through, these nuts lock it into the car a little bit, you know, tighter. Like everything's nice and tight this way. So I want that grill to be able to come off. There's also a few other reasons why it's nice to be able to take the grill out with the front clip on. And I was able to kind of design a way where it hooks in one place and then you've got screws that go through the outside of the body, but they're not very visible because they just kind of go, you know, in a kind of obscure location. So you'll see how I did it. It's pretty cool, but I'm glad that I figured out. And of course, it was probably more work than just gluing some mounting points back there and putting screws in it or whatever. But yeah, I think it came out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. I'll tell you, I was struggling cutting these grills with the little body saw first. And finally I realized that the circular saw was probably the fastest way to do it, but I put more of a finishing blade on it and still moved really slow just so it could just kind of chew through the plastic. I mean, you need to wear some eye protection because if these little pieces of the grill fly off, they get caught in the saw, like you never know where it's gonna go. But I don't recommend that way if you're not experienced with a lot of stuff, but I did it just because I felt like I could get away with it, and it did make cutting these pieces a lot quicker because with the body saw, that blade moves up and down and it just sits there and melts the plastic, so it's kind of a nightmare. Now you'll see one of the things I had to do here was build some metal brackets, and I think that I fastened these things to, I don't know, I'm gonna have to take it apart again to see. I just can't even remember how I did it now. It's been a month or so. But you know, you can get creative with like building things that you mount into the car if you want the grill to kind of set in there. And then, you know, I think what I did for the top was I still had to resin some pieces, like some metal tabs that would have a bolt hole in them, so that when I set the grill in from outside, I'm just gonna have to line those 2 screw holes up. The bottom of the grill is like hooked into those little things that I built. So those are good, but then the top is gonna use 2 screws. So the screws are holding it into the little bottom tray things that I built. And I want to say it's something kind of like that, but it wasn't a super difficult design, but it's pretty cool. It worked out good.
Oh my god, I got the grills. It looks so good. This is crazy. You see tape up there, but I have some resin drying above and I don't want it to fall. So that's why, but I'll take those pieces of tape off. It won't be bad. But oh my god, the little grills, they look so awesome in there. It's starting to look like it's ready to go back on the car. So, oh man, so cool. Still love this color.
I definitely remember this day. Now, I don't remember what day it was, but this was one of those days where a lot of hard work kind of got to come together, and I got to really see some cool stuff happen. So, you know, I had to trim some things like in the front grills. Like, there's not a lot of space once the front clip goes on to that core support panel. There's not a lot of room to play, so I definitely had some trimming to do to get all this. You know, once the little grills were installed, to get those to fit, it took a little bit before the front clip would slide back all the way. But I just worked it back little by little and tried to be careful so I didn't scratch anything, and it eventually made it. Of course, you got to take the front wheels off because, you know, they're so big. You got to get those things off to take the front clip on and off. So, yeah, this was it's really, really exciting. It's looking great.
Okay, here's what I figured out for the tail lights. Now, I can get these 2 to go through far enough. If you spend the time cutting out the tail light bucket properly, you can get these 2 to go through. So the one on the very end, this is the passenger side tail light. So it's gonna be the one that would be furthest inside, and then the one that's next, okay, the middle. Those 2 you can get through good enough for the nut to catch, and then if you grind down the fiberglass a little bit on the inside, it should go a little further. The problem is this one that's the furthest outward, basically nearest the wheel, I guess you'd say. So like that, that's like I said, passenger side. So when it's furthest outward, it barely goes enough into the fiberglass to where you can kind of feel this like flush with the fiberglass. So if you can get that, you know, pretty much flush with the fiberglass, I don't know why this thing isn't focusing good. You know, the phones used to do such a good job of taking video, and now it just goes out of focus every time you touch something or you move it. So what I did to get this one to go is I have what in the aircraft field we call this a barrel nut, but I made this. So I took a bolt, I drilled a hole down, I actually cut it down to where the overall length is only about a 1/2 inch. I drilled a hole through it, and then I did the 1032 or 10-32 thread tap in there. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, because that's what you need for this. So this is what we'd basically call a barrel nut. It goes on here, okay, and you're just gonna have to drill out the fiberglass hole big enough to where this works just like an aircraft barrel nut. Now in the aircraft field, these are typically round head with a Allen wrench, you know, hex indentation there, but I'm just using a regular bolt. I figured this would work. If I have to, I can put a lock washer on here too, so that's kind of cool. That's gonna be what hopefully solves the problem of those studs being too short or the fiberglass just being too deep there. And I started with a bolt that was about 3/4, I believe. Focus. So yeah, basically that's what it started out is. I just kind of ground down the threads. I'm still going to clean it up a little bit and make it, you know, look a little bit nicer. But it basically works pretty good. It's got good threads in it. Try to get that hole as centered as possible. And the big thing here is I believe it's if you have a drill index, you need a pretty specific size. So this I think was a number 16. Let me see, 12, 13, 14. Yeah, it was a 16 and they're a little temperamental. Okay, the studs for the tail lights are even like, these are the nuts that come with the G35 on the tail lights. And if, you know, you can use those at least on, you know, 4 of them from what I've been able to do. But those outer 2, I tried making nuts at first, and even though I got these to kind of thread on, you have to really play with it. It's almost like you got to oversize the pilot hole a little bit because it's like those studs are just a little tight, you know, and these didn't want to go on very easily. I had to like basically play with it for a little bit, you know, run your thread tap through all the way a few times. So if you make these, you make the little basically barrel nuts, you're just going to have to run the next size drill bit through there and see if you can get it to fit better. But the good thing is if you're making these, you can play around and figure it out, and if you ruin one, you just make another one. So that's what we did. Drill a hole through the bolt and turn it into a barrel nut. Get used to the countless trips you're going to make to Lowe's, Home Depot, or hardware stores to get all the stuff that you need when you're building this car. Black trim screws, rubber washers, I don't even know what I'm doing. Oh, I know where all this stuff goes with. Door panels, yeah, just, oh, and this is kind of cool. I've saved this LED light fixture face for like years. I used to do a lot of stage lighting, and I've already taken a couple of the red LEDs out at one point because I made a little Halloween decoration. It was like a witch and a battery-powered 2 red LEDs. But there's more LEDs on here, and I'm going to unsolder some of the red ones and see if I can just make my own little circuit board for the for that third brake light piece in there. And I don't know for sure that I'll make it myself. I might just order a red LED to put in there, but it's not very hard because I think the LEDs take about 3 volts each, and I think if you wire 3 or 4 of them together, the 12-volt battery will power them just right. I want to say you can do 3 or 4 in series, and then if you want to do another row, you would parallel the other series of them together. So it's been a while since I played with LEDs on 12 volt, but yeah, that's what that is. So man, it's just the reason I save everything. I mean, I don't save everything. I know how to get rid of stuff, but I got some junk here I need to go through on my little workbench, and I need to finally install this circuit board that goes to my air conditioning unit for my house. We'll get there. Just always something. All right, I got a few things going on here. It's really cool. So the mesh for these little rear grills, stuff you order on Amazon. Now, it does have an angle to it, okay? If you look at the tops of these little flat areas, they angle down. At least that's the way I always put them on, so it's consistent. See how they kind of look like they angle down? If it was the other way, they would be angling up, and I like it to where if the part's sitting this way, I guess you can always think of like the rain running off of it, like away from the car instead of into the car. So get these pieces painted. Once you got them fitted really good, you can paint them, and then after painting, put the mesh in. And what I did was I just went around and I prepped the whole lip all the way around the back, and I used dabs of hot glue to hold this on temporarily. Now I'm thinking the hot glue actually seems to hold really good to sanded fiberglass, and I think if you build a blob around it, that's what is holding this on so good. Now, you can't just bend this stuff. I mean, maybe you can, but it's a lot better if you hit it with the heat gun. So I got the heat gun out, and as you go, like you pre-bend this part before you start putting it on. Pre-bend that and pre-bend that as good as you can get it to about a 90 degree, almost a 90 degree. And then when you're putting it on, you might have to get the heat gun to bend it a little bit more. So these aren't too bad. This is just tedious. It's time consuming. This took me a couple hours to get this one done, just getting the grill put on. So I think the next one will be a little faster now that I kind of know what I'm doing. But yeah, it's pretty cool. And I've just really held it down good where the high stress areas, like where I really had to push down on it. I made sure I put a good blob of glue on there so it holds. And hot glue might be a good solution. I mean, that stuff is on there. And I know that it's hard to pick all that stuff off the sanded fiberglass. It sands really good to it. I mean, it sticks really good to it. So yeah, otherwise this looks cool. And then we got my dash panels that I built, doing the whole dry carbon thing. I sprayed these with some low gloss clear, and it's still gonna, I think it's gonna flatten out a little bit more before it's completely dry. But right now it's a little tacky, but it's pretty well over dust free. So yeah, so that's what's going on. Some cool stuff. Oh, here's that radio bracket I spent a lot of time on. It's super cool. Got some paint on it. I'm gonna get my radio put in, or stereo, whatever. Maybe it's old school to call it a radio. I don't actually listen to the radio much anymore, but so that's cool. That was a pain, but it fits exactly how I want it to. All right, so we're at the car now, and I've already got the right lower grill thing put on. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, that's over there. But so I've already made sure that the two holes that I already kind of had with the self-tapping screws, they still fit. And I'm getting ready to put a rivet nut up here. I don't know why it's weird. You can drill this hole out and wallow it out 3 times, and then this thing still wants to get stuck in here for whatever reason. So, and I didn't pull it with the gun. I just like stuck it in there, and then now it's like doesn't want to come out. So and then of course, like me, I don't like it's just a weird thing. Like when you drill and the dust falls on the new paint, like don't wipe it. Make sure that you get the air blower, blow it off, and then if you're gonna wipe the dust, remember after it's painted, use like a polishing cloth, or the shop towels. Actually, they polish pretty good as far as I've seen. But use it with some of the spray wax. Don't do it dry, because then the fiberglass dust is just gonna scratch up your paint job and stuff. So anyway, that's what I'm doing. Getting ready to shoot the rivet nuts in here, and then I get 1/3 point, but I want these 2 in first, because I want to make sure that the piece is exactly where those 2 are gonna hold it, and then I can accurately figure out where to get the hole over here. And it is a bit tricky because you can't really get the drill in here to drill straight. So I typically get like a tiny hole started, and then I push the part where it needs to go, and I put a small drill bit through there, and I just turn it with my finger so it makes a mark in the paint. And then when I take the piece back off, I can get in here a little easier to actually drill through there. And then the rivet nut will shoot pretty straight, and then after that we're good to go. But it was definitely tricky on the other side, so I'm gonna do this one now.
Man, if there's one thing I could tell you guys about doing this rear section of the car, I mean, it's almost like it's almost a work of art, the way all these panels have to fit and puzzle together. So the one thing that I would probably do a little bit different before painting is getting these panels to fit with the rivet nuts installed, because you'll find that, you know, you can put them on with the self-tapping screws and get the gaps right and all that. Like, I typically leave about an 1/8 inch gap depending on what panel or what edge it is, maybe a 1/4 inch like next to the tail light, so there's kind of room for adjustment or whatever. But man, just to get the gaps right to follow the main shell of the car, and you know, get these pieces to sit next to each other properly, I would say it's probably pretty important that you go ahead and install the rivet nuts before you paint. Now, I didn't do that, and luckily I still got these things to set pretty nice together, but you could stand to be a little bit more accurate, and that's going to give you a little bit more accuracy if you install these rivet nuts earlier, and then you gap all these parts once you've got your final screw type that's going to fasten everything together. So yeah, this was definitely a touchy thing. I think I did end up having to shave 1 or 2 of the panels a little bit after I got the rivet nuts installed, but that's okay because I do plan to respray the long middle panel. There were some areas I didn't have enough black paint on it before I clear coated it, but that's okay. I pretty much knew I was gonna have to respray that piece anyway, so it's okay. The fact that I had to adjust the gap a little bit, no big deal. But yeah, this is one of those things where you got to get all this stuff pretty close, and I would say this is probably one of those areas where you want to get it exactly where it's gonna go before paint.
Okay, I've probably been pondering this idea since I started, well, no, it was since I decided that the gas filler was going to go right below the tail light. So I've been thinking, all right, there's going to be some kind of access panel. I don't know. What I'm going to probably do is cover these with carbon fiber, at least some resin. These are going to get coated completely with resin, so they're no longer just exposed wood. And they're either going to end up carbon fiber, like decorative carbon fiber, or if they're fiberglass, I might just paint them the black that goes on the car. But basically, this is going to mount on that trim piece just right below the gas door or the gas cap. And I had to drill 2 new holes because I needed the holes to be a little further. That fiberglass piece isn't that far back. So, it kind of cuts off. I would have had to add some fiberglass to it. And I probably will anyway, but I don't know for sure. I think I can shoot a rivet nut in the fiberglass. Here, let's go to the car. But I made 2 of them. I don't know what this is going to cover. It's just going to be there so it matches. And I figured I could probably come up with something to put behind it, just something kind of cool. Maybe the little tow hook or something. I mean, who knows? Like, maybe I can come up with some clever way to put like a little tool kit there or something. I don't know. But what I'm going to do is, it's looking so good, I've got some markings made where this hinge is gonna basically mount on there. Let's see. And then this will open and close. So it's gonna sit right in here like that. I still need to, shape it off. It needs to be shaped off on the top of the right a little bit, or the right top. But basically, it's gonna click closed, and then I'll be able to open it to access my gas filler. And I'm gonna do something, hopefully they don't look tacky. I don't think they will, but it's just gonna look like, here, if I zoom it out a bit, like it kind of fits the angles of the car. I mean, they're gonna be black nonetheless, whether they're carbon fiber. I'm just going to have to figure out how to get them to blend in with the little grill that goes back there. I'm going to have the mesh grill, and it'll be back here and then over there. So we'll see. Hopefully they look good. I don't know. I'm going to figure out something to make it look uniform in some way or another, but we'll see. Okay, so I got my little rear piece that goes on the car. So what I'm attempting to do is build a spring latch. Now you can see that I've kind of pre-cut this, and what's supposed to happen is it's gonna go in here with a screw, okay? And then it's gonna spring up and down like that. Now this tab is gonna be bent upward, and it's gonna catch back behind here. And then this tab is gonna be bent downward, but then I'm also gonna bend a little spot out so you can like put your finger, use that as like the little button to move it. So I'm gonna bend it and see how everything works and I'll put it together. All right, I have a lot going on with this little rear trim piece here. I had to build the doors. One of them is gonna cover my fuel filler tube, and the other one is just there so it looks symmetrical and it matches both sides. So there is actually a hole behind that one, and I don't know, I might put like a little compartment or something, you never know. But shot some rivet nuts in this piece, and that's the way those hinges are gonna be held on. I also flush mounted the rivets that are holding the hinges
And of course, these aren't gonna stay. I'd probably kind of mentioned already that these are gonna get covered completely in fiberglass, maybe even a layer of carbon fiber, but I'm gonna go all the way around them with resin. That way they're completely protected from the elements. So they're gonna be like, almost as if they were plastic pieces. I just used the wood to get my basic shape. So these I sunk in as much as I could. That way when I do the first layer of glass, I mean, I'll sand that rivet down just a little bit. Same thing over here. Try to get them as flush as you can, but obviously not like all the way through, because then they're not gonna hold. So, and really when it all comes down to it, the fiberglass is gonna really be what holds all this together. Because when this is all sanded, there's gonna be the layer of glass that goes over this too. So that way, you know, it's all one nice solid unit. Now, if you're fortunate enough to get the third brake light bucket, I don't know who really has them. I think Melvin sent me this one with my interior parts because I had asked him about it or something. But the plexiglass, I don't know if anybody gets that or if they're having to make it. I actually built this, and I'm thinking I might do it the same way that I fastened my rear window, where I just maybe use 4 screws. Like the rear window has them kind of going all the way around, obviously, because it needs to be sealed. But this, I mean, yeah, it should be sealed too, but I think if I put some kind of rubber around it, maybe 4 screws, just, you know, 2 on each side, because it needs to be pressed down. See, the plexi's straight, but this panel has a bit of a curve. So the 4 screws would hold it down nice and tight. And of course, you got to cut this panel, you know. I'm going to probably, when I trim it, I'm going to probably put masking tape on here just so I have something good to draw on. And then I'm going to set this glass back on it. And then I'll trace the tape, but then I might cut it a little smaller. That way, you know, this, you're not going to see any of this like edge or whatever. So I don't know. That's kind of what's going on. I haven't completely figured this one out yet. And I'm still figuring out the latches for these little doors, but I think I've got an idea that I'm going to go with. So that's where we're at with these pieces. God, it's always something. Of course, this one's going to get repainted. I realized, I know I was in a hurry the night that I did this one, and I was using up some leftover clear coat that I had. So I was just kind of like, whatever. And I got a little bit light on the base coat. So I'm going to have to sand it down a bit and reshoot some of the black and re-clear coat it. But that's fine because I had to do some work to it anyway. So I want to finish doing the work, make sure these doors are ready to, you know, be bolted on and everything's good with the way they latch. Also, I was thinking about putting the reverse camera here, but this might be a little bit too tight of an area for it. I might still put it here, but I also might find a way to integrate it into the third brake light, either at the top or maybe a bracket that comes out and hangs the camera itself. I'm not sure yet, but yeah, so it's just always something with this car. There's just a lot going on with this one piece. So we'll see. But hey, one thing at a time. Can't believe how close it's getting. And the front looks so good. Every time I walk past the car, I can't believe I've got the headlights uncovered with the tape and protective crap they had on them. They looked so bad, and now like it's all put together. The grills are in. Oh, it just looks so good. Just such a cool looking car. All right.
So here's the thing, at the time of putting this video together, I still don't have some of this stuff figured out on the rear. I've kind of put it aside. I've done some other things, you know. I was coating the wheel wells with the bed liner on the inside, like the rear tubs and things like that. Also, I'm kind of back to working on the interior, but anyway, we're gonna let these pieces just kind of be as far as the video is concerned for now. I might revisit these on a later date, like on another episode, just so you know, you guys can see how they came out and what I ended up doing. But yeah, that's where they're at for now. And this whole rear section, it's just, there's a lot to it. Alright, so I know this movie is getting pretty long, and I'm gonna show you just a few things in this next section where, you know, it's just some things I'm kind of tinkering with lately. I got some low gloss clear put on my carbon fiber panels, which I think it looks pretty cool. They're probably going to end up staying that way, at least for a while. You know, tying up some electrical wires, kind of getting the doors built and slowly back together, just, you know, radio stuff. That's kind of what I've been doing lately. I'm actually trying to catch you guys up to about where I'm at, like in reality on the car, because sometimes I'm making these videos and then I'm like way ahead of the car, but really what you're gonna see in this episode is pretty accurate now. You know, I haven't had a lot of time to work on it lately, and of course it kills me that it's been 3.5 years now, but at least we're making progress. I know, I think I told myself I wanted to do it in a year, then I was like, okay, I want it done after 2 years, and just, you know, sometimes work gets in the way, but it's pretty cool. I'm loving it. Every time I can work on it, I'm happy. I love making some more progress. There's just a lot to it, and sometimes, you know, I guess even though I've done classic cars in the past and things like that, this will be the first car that I've done completely from start to finish. Even though I'm going to probably have a professional interior guy do the dash, I'm very involved with the interior on this car. Like, I'm trimming the pieces, I'm getting stuff to fit, I'm going to upholster the headliner and probably a few of the other pieces myself. So it's really just going to be those complicated pieces that I don't want to ruin by trying to do it myself. But yeah, this is it's coming together, but we're just kind of on to a bunch of miscellaneous stuff now, just tying up little loose ends, and you know, hopefully we'll get to see the end of this thing pretty soon.
Alright, this radio bracket was super tedious to build. I put screw holes on the bottom to hold it into the side of the console, the top, and I know I kind of showed you guys this before, but what I added was the side pieces. And these holes line up with the radio, okay? So when the radio goes in, there's those holes that accept the screws on the side of the radio. That's where these are gonna line up. So basically you put the radio in here, and then you install this bracket with the radio unit all in it, and that should make it pretty solid. You know, I really wish this is something that they sold to fit the Vaydor like this. I didn't enjoy building this. I mean, it's fun, it's all fun, but this was tedious. And I think it's gonna work exactly how I want it to though, so that's good. I'm gonna sand it down, throw some quick black paint on it just to keep it from rusting, and yeah, put the radio in.
Alright, so I'm building out the passenger door, hopefully for the almost last time. I mean, I don't know. I'm putting the wiring harness back in and all that good stuff. I don't know if you guys are going to have to do this, but this side, the passenger side, gets really close to the hinge hitting the fender as it comes down. I had to like sand a little bit off the hinge corner just to like make sure that it passes without a problem. And it looks super close right now, but I at least got it to where I don't think it's gonna have an issue. Once it nicks that edge, it'll probably never look right. I mean, I can touch it up, but I don't want it to nick it. So hopefully, hope for the best here. But so anyway, what I found is I wanna try and use as much of the stuff as possible. So like as much as I didn't wanna do this, cause I feel like Infiniti would probably want 500 bucks for this rubber piece if I decided to like replace it or whatever. It ain't gonna work like this on this car because it's just different, you know, the doors go up. So what I decided to do was I'm unwinding some of this bundle of wires here. I took some of the big protective stuff off from here. I cut it back about, I don't know, that's about a good 3 inches or so, 3.5. So I cut that off here. I'm gonna unwind them. I'm gonna take this back just a little. And what I'm gonna do is I've cut this in half. So this is gonna slip all the way up and it's gonna go into the nice rectangle that I made in the door. Because when I was building the door, I made sure that this fit properly in the door if I wanted to use it that way. So now that I know that works, I'm gonna pull this back once I get the wires tied the way that I want them. I'm gonna unbundle this and then probably just put them all together so it's like this. And once this goes in the door, I'm gonna take whatever size of this protective cover stuff fits and I'm gonna put a piece on there. And I'm thinking I can just take 2 zip ties, just make this long enough. And I'm thinking I can take 2 zip ties,
to kind of squeeze this on to this stuff and just basically bridge the gap. So we're just kind of extending the whatever you call it, this loom or whatever the heck it is. So we're just extending the boot in a way. And that's what I'm doing here. So yeah, fun. But as far as, you know, everything else, I think it's gonna go fine. I got the door handles installed. I'm gonna try and build this door out and see how far I can get before I gotta go backwards again. But you know, that's what this car is. Go as far forward as you can until you have to go backwards. So, continuing on.
I found that this was a good time also to get my gauge cluster pieces to fit back in. Now, this is kind of confusing. You kind of, as far as I know, you're using the cover piece from the gauge cluster originally, but then you're also using the curved piece that Vaydor sends you, and I think you just upholster that and you kind of get it to cover everything and touch the dash. But you still use the original like tunnel to hold the gauge cluster in there nice. Now, you just have to cut into the dash, into the Vaydor dash a little bit to get this to fit, which I don't understand because they make the dash have this nice like molded area, which kind of confuses you and makes you think that needs to be there, but it doesn't. I mean, as far as I know, I've seen other guys say you have to cut that out, and that's the only way that the cluster was gonna fit. So yeah, this was a little bit baffling, but I got it to work. And I know it's not really part of the interior, but I also figured it's a good time to reinstall the hood latch too.